Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back. So, 70% of the people think that the other 30% are freaking nuts. That's the subject of today's video. And I'm going to give you some thoughts on what's going on here in Korea and also some thoughts on what's going on in the USA. The poll I'm referring to is essentially 7% of the country has lost faith in the leadership of President Yoon. I've been talking about this the last couple of weeks. If you don't know, he was impeached. And in fact, yesterday, there was a warrant issued for his arrest. To my knowledge, I don't think they've arrested him yet. Hopefully they arrest him today, tomorrow, whatever. It's New Year's today, so maybe they're just waiting for the holiday to pass, but just arrest the dude. If you don't know, he declared an illegal martial law, and he's been under investigation for all kinds of things. Same with his wife, actually, who is corrupt in all kinds of ways, taking bribes, stock manipulation, lying about her past, all kinds of things. And the crazy thing about it is if you think, okay, just remove that guy, our problems will be gone. Well, the opposition leader who is essentially rising in the polls, maybe not so great either. He was convicted for lying during his campaign. It was like a 1-year conviction. Then they got suspended somehow. I don't know. Had to do with a real estate deal, and someone even actually died who may or may not have been a witness. I don't know the full details of this stuff, because when you look into it, they'll say allegation this, allegation that, and then you're not really sure who to believe. This is the same thing for anything that we live through in this day and age. It's hard to know what to believe anymore. I'm just be perfectly honest with you guys. And one of the things that I really enjoy about having you in the community, I just talked about yesterday how it was wrong on a certain issue with Carter. A lot of you corrected me, and I say thank you. I really appreciate that, and I mean sincerely, because that's something that sort of why I do YouTube, and I want to have a communication with you in the community. Is sometimes you hear something and your first reaction is, I don't know, is it true, not true? Someone please tell me what's true, right? That's like natural humanish, or you look at it and you think you believe something and you just want to get another person's opinion. Again, these are just sort of natural human reactions. So I want to talk about, like, as we go into 2025, sort of what I'm feeling about, say, the whole Trumpy stuff, the Musky stuff, right? And dealing with what's going on here in Korea. And it is important that we pay attention to what's happening right now. Why? Because history will maybe remember things differently than how we experienced it on the ground. It's different, right? And so that's sort of something I really treasure. For example, I just made a video yesterday, and you guys can read through comments. We have a lot of interesting people in our community. 2 people actually said they have direct connections to people who are taking hostage during the Iran hostage situation, where I think it was like 55 Americans were taken. That's something like that. Don't quote me directly on numbers, but it's something of that nature. And someone was mentioning that they had a mom's friend was taken hostage, but didn't know a lot because they were a kid at the time. Someone else mentioned that they had a neighbor who was taken hostage also. And we also have someone mentioned that they were training in Intel, and during Intel, that's like a case study, these kind of things. The reason why I mention all of you in the community is this is part of, seriously, a real community, like having a group of people to ask questions to and to ask, because I lived through the events of the Iran-Contra stuff, guys. I really remember Ollie North was on TV every day, and he'd just swear, and he's like, I don't remember, whatever, I take the fifth, I've advised not to say anything. Like, what the heck is that? But I was too young to really understand it entirely. And what's interesting is how our so shared experience and lived memory really matter on terms of, like, sort of which groups or circles that you're in, or what age you are at the time and what you're thinking about. So, for example, during the 80s, a movie that was really impactful for me, and I've mentioned it several times on the channel, was actually Boys in the Hood. I know it might seem kind of strange, like, why would this Asian kid from Oregon care about Black kids hanging out in South Central LA? Well, it really spoke to me at the time. And there's a lot to talk about that particular movie, but I'll just say this: that there's a scene where Lawrence Fishburne is essentially, teaching kids about the community and stuff like that, and he's just like saying, why is there a liquor store in every corner? Why do we have drugs? Why do we have guns? These kind of things. Do Black people bring these across the border? Right, all this stuff. Do they set up these businesses to sell it to these people? And he's like, no, of course not. Right? They want us, and in his phrase, and I can't say able to say they want us to hurt ourselves. These kind of things. And I bring this example because it's just what comes to my mind, is because oftentimes the things that you experience in your life on the ground. That's what you're dealing with right now, right? You're just thinking of like just that thing that on the ground, right? But you may not necessarily have a macro perspective of sort of why that's happening. And it was interesting because many of your comments you just talked about in the last video was like, hey, the CIA was involved with drug trafficking, which is like crazy in itself. And I went through and read all that stuff right before making this video. And again, it's like allegation this, allegation that. Now I want to make it clear and stuff. The way that these things often break down, though, is across party lines. And then you're like, okay, what do I believe at all anymore in this day and age, right? Is it all just party based where one party makes the accusation, and then if you're in that party, then you have to believe it or whatever? And this is sort of why I tell you guys all the time, I don't really have a dog in the fight in the sense that I don't have to have a particular party be right all the time. It doesn't, it's irrelevant to me. What's relevant to me is just finding the truth of whatever matter. And I hope that you guys are in the same camp as me. Now, certainly, which I'll be honest with you, in this day and age, right now, today, I think it's pretty obvious that the Muskie and the Trumpy people are not so great. I think it's just freaking obvious. And what's sad as we go into 2025, how blatantly corrupt these people are. And I mean like really blatantly. And I'll also be perfectly frank with you. And that's why I mentioned the Korean stuff. Say like, hey, the current president's no good. Maybe the opposition's maybe not so great either, but there's different levels of, corruption. And in this particular case, talking about the U.S. situation, man, that Trump and Musk stuff looks really bad, because not only do you have their corruption, they're appointing a whole team of incompetent people. And I'm just telling you guys flat out, I see it. I know you see it, but we have to cover it every day because there's a lot of stuff that history may brush over or, may not necessarily remember every single detail. For example, the things that really stick with me as we go into 2025 is like the whole crypto stuff. Now, why am I mentioning the crypto stuff? Because I think energy going forward is going to be a massive, massive problem. I was just looking at the news. I think it was, I can't remember wrong. I think it was like Puerto Rico lost their power, and it was like 1 million people out of power. It was just headlines as I'm just waking up today, and I'm like, what the heck? And it's it's not just going to be, say, Puerto Rico. It may happen to Texas this winter. It happened before. It may happen in other places. And if you just take sort of like a small view of the world and say your power's out, you're just like, oh, why is my power out? I hate my power company, or why is my energy so high, et cetera, right? Like, that's what the regular person's sort of thoughts are. And there's nothing wrong with that, because for most just, everyday Americans, they go to work, they come home, they want to take care of the family, and, they have to deal with the bills on the table. That's the average person, right? Which is completely understandable. And so I put in that terms because many times, people get in fights and like, oh, I hate my other Americans, I hate my, fellow countrymen, etc. Sometimes other people just, it's hard how to explain it. Like they don't have the time or the resources or the people around them to explain things from a larger macro perspective. And on top of that, we essentially have a media-driven environment, which sort of takes, if you want to tune into a certain kind of party, you watch that channel. Tune into another kind of party, you watch that other channel, and you don't necessarily get a full picture of everything. I'm talking about a lot right now. It's just a lot on my mind. I'll put it this way. Being here in Korea has been really impactful on my life. My wife is Korean, as you guys know, and we meet her family every holiday. And, she's got aunts and uncles that are older, so they must be like in their 60s and 70s, these kind of ages. And for me, I'm a student of history. I like to learn things. I like to learn where I'm at. I like to know why things are the way that they are. And, recently I watched, I think it was a couple years ago, I watched some newer movies. I mention these all the time because I think they're fantastic movies. It's called 1987, The Day Will Come. I keep mentioning that one. It's basically the fight for democracy here in Korea. And then you have 12/12 Today. That was just the movie last year, and that was essentially about a military coup. And there's another one which is okay. It's not a bad movie anyway. I like the first two better, but it's called The Taxi Driver. But the point is of these movies is that what the sort of media was telling the regular people at the time, because the media was controlled by the government, wasn't necessarily what was actually happening on the ground. And the things that were happening on the ground to just regular people, right, needed to be reported, needed to be out there. And this is something that when I asked, my wife's aunt and uncles about it, they were kind of silent on. It was interesting, and for some people, I think maybe some people feel shame that they were on the wrong side of history. Perhaps I don't know what's in their hearts. I'm just saying it happens sometimes. Some people don't want to talk to it because they feel shame, or sometimes people are just too busy with their lives that they don't care, or who knows. I don't know what's going on in their hearts, but it was so fascinating to learn of this historical important events, right, happening, talking about corruption in Korea, and elder generations didn't want to talk about it. That was, to me, that was strange. And for me, I like to learn history. I want to know the truth. I want to talk to people who live through these things, right? And I still search for people today who want to, tell me what really happened. But some people may not necessarily know entirely everything. And that brings us to where we are right now. Now, right now we live in a time to where it's a 24/7 news cycle, and there's a lot of disappointment right now. And guys, I feel it too. I really know. You feel like a lot of people that were, say, left leaning are kind of like moving to the right because they say, oh, well, maybe I can get more viewerships. Maybe, I can get more clicks, and maybe I can, have a larger audience if I, go with the person who's winning the office right now. So that'd be the Trump situation. But this is sort of a thing that I always want to remind everyone. Whatever is happening today, right? Yeah, it may seem like it's okay to go that way, but that's only short-term thinking, and you want to be playing the long game, right? Right now, I'm just talking about politics, but this could be anything in your life, be it your job, be it relationships, right? Anything in your life. The decisions you make today, yeah, sure, they may have some short-term benefits. But if you're only playing the short game, you're gonna burn yourself out quickly. You're gonna live a much less positive life. And the other thing is too, it's like it really eats at you. I'll give you a simple example. What if say you have a job, and the boss is like, maybe there's a whole team of people, and your boss say, hey, who's responsible for this great work? It's fantastic work. And we'll use the example of someone else cheats you. Let's say your coworker says, oh, it's all me, I did it, it's all me, and basically throws all the other members of the team under the bus. Nobody likes that person, right? You guys know this. No one likes that person. They basically lied to the boss. Yes, they got the promotion. Yes, they got the benefits for the short time, but they basically lost all of their friends and all of their teammates. And you have to decide, like, which is a priority for you. Long term, that person, who knows, maybe they rise up in the ranks by cheating other people. It's certainly possible, but money isn't necessarily everything in this world, right? And I think what's frustrating to me, and I'm trying to express this clearly because I know I have a lot on my mind, is we seem to be in an era where we're talking about the Muskies and the Trumpies, where like people just value wealth over anything else. Is that the society that we want? And it's been, how can I say, in our community, it's been nice to hear when people talking about Carter. We're just talking about Carter right now because he just passed away, unfortunately. And people were saying, his problem was he was too honest and too moral to be in politics. And I'm laughing because it's like, there may be some truth to that. Can we still have honest people today? It's frankly hard in today's environment, right? Maybe always politics has always been like that. You can certainly make that case, because the problem is that in order to be popular, right, in order to win elections, in order to be the person that people want to listen to, is people want to be fed, essentially. You could call it fast food, I guess. We'll put it that way. They want to be fed the fast food, that sort of short term happiness that may not necessarily be true, right? Fast food tastes good, but it's not great for your long term. And I'm all about eating the vegetables. I know I'm using a funny analogy, but right, long term eating vegetables, maybe they don't taste so great today. Maybe they're not full of sugar or whatever like that. But long term, you're going to be better off and have a healthier life as a whole. And what I'm sharing with you is because people often ask me, if you guys don't know, I'm 49. What's the secret to my young age? It's or young appearance, I guess I should say, put it. It's this. It's what I'm telling you right now. The devices that I'm giving you right now. I seek to try to go for the long term in every choice that we make. My wife and I, we have these conversations all the time. be it handling money, be it handling relationships, be it handling, where you're going to live, these kind of things. This is stuff that you always talk about. And we try to have honest conversations about these kind of things, and they're really important conversations. I give you another example. As my wife's parents age, we have to figure out what to do with her father. He's just getting really old, and I'm sure you guys know this. When you start to reach middle age, basically, like I said, I'm 49. Then that means that the generation above you is starting to get to the age to where it's going to be harder and harder for them to take care of themselves, as you guys know. And so these kind of conversations are tough, but when you go into it with, and this would be sensitive topics, you can talk about dealing with money, dealing with family, these kind of things. But when you go into it as like, hey, I'm just looking for the best solution. Let's find something that works. I hope that can be our sort of our culture going forward, not just for family issues, but for our political life, our markets, everything. And I think what's frustrating, and I'm trying to put it more relatable terms with the whole Muskie Trumpy stuff, is like, I guess a weird way to think about it is like, I feel like we're related to a bunch of people, be it other voters in the USA that we can't divorce them necessarily. They're part of the family, right? That's how it is. You can't choose your family the same way you can't choose your fellow citizens. They've made a pretty crazy decision in my humble opinion with the whole Trumpy Musk stuff, and it's tough. How will history remember this time? I think, looking back, and I I really hope there's a change, as we go forward. But at this moment, I think there's certainly a time where we'll probably remember this as where social media really took rise. Hey, guys, I'm on YouTube. You're watching me on YouTube, right? We're part of social media, but where social media really took rise, and people didn't know what to believe anymore, and they started to join whatever culty groups to reinforce their beliefs and sort of turn off their brains, essentially, right? It was easier just to accept that fast food messaging because it reinforced their wrong beliefs, essentially, opposed to seeking the truth and going for vegetables in a healthy system. As it turns out, which I think is probably a likely scenario, Trump retreats, right, because he's getting old in age. And then you have Musk and all the people around him take more control, which was happened to Reagan in his later years. I think we're gonna have a lot of problems going forward. I'm saying this, all these things just in full honesty and stuff like that, as best as I can, because one thing that always frustrated me about any kind of poor leadership is they always act like, oh, we couldn't have seen those problems, we couldn't have known. Oh, no one could have known. We were the smartest people in the room, right? And the thing is, for me, good leadership is when you can spot problems before they occur and take preventative actions, right? And so this is sort of what I'm thinking about every single day when I go look at the news is like, okay, what are the most important issues right now? How can we understand the world that we live in? And how can we take preventative actions to, prevent bad things from happening and make a better future for our kids? The first thing, and I can't do everything, guys. I wish I could, but I can't. But the first thing is, surround yourself with people to where you have someone reliable sources to, converse with and share information with each other. And that's what I'm thankful for going into 2025 is having that with you. And I really do sincerely mean that. And I'm very thankful for that because I really frank, if you know how my mind works, I just been thinking about a lot of things just the last 12 hours or so, when people brought to light a bunch of stuff that I had lived through, be it the Iran-Contra stuff and otherwise, but didn't have a full recollection of it because I was a kid at the time, right? But today, as an adult right now, watching the whole Musk and the Trumps and the, we're probably going to, just be perfectly frank, we're probably going to forget about Kamala Harris because she lost the election, and there'll be a new candidate, next time around. I don't think she'll run again. And the period right now that we all remember it will be very different than what history will teach in 4 years. Kamala won't be in our history, unfortunately. I'm just saying how it plays out. Oftentimes, the history is written by the victors. But this sort of goes back to remembering what people thought on the ground. Like, say, when Carter lost to Reagan, and I really appreciate people sharing their thoughts of, who they voted for, what they thought was going on, what they always thought about Reagan, right? What they thought about Ollie North, these kind of things. And that's the importance of listening to people who are older who lived through it, because this may not necessarily be exactly the same thing that you read in the history books. And even when I go back and because I was looking at this stuff, someone mentioned Operation Eagle Claw. That was the helicopter thing where they tried to rescue the hostages and it didn't work out because it was like the helicopters, I guess, weren't fitted right for the dust or something of that nature. I was never taught about the Operation Eagle Claw thing. It just wasn't something that, like they don't teach you about failed, operations. It's not really something that you necessarily, that particular one, you don't necessarily study. But if you live through it, you guys, it was interesting because you guys are saying, oh yeah, I remember seeing reports. I always thought Carter was unfairly treated. And it was interesting to hear that kind of stuff. And it's the same exact stuff that we're living through right now, right? Like probably, I'll give you an example. Probably if you remember the Musk and the $1 million a day lottery thing. Do you guys remember this? Like probably that's not going to be a big part of history 5 years from now. We're going to forget that, right? We're going to remember that Trump won, right? We're going to forget about the Musk and this weird lottery thing that he did. But you and I living through it, we're talking about now because it just happened. And it's like, what the heck? How could people, go along with that? That's the Looney Tunes world that we live in. But again, you got to remember these things and tell your kids about this stuff. And the same way I mentioned to say the Korean situation. If you aren't familiar with Korean history, and that's why I mentioned the movies 1987 or the movie 1212, or you could talk about the taxi driver. But essentially, what it was is the government would order. Short word to say it, people to be detained, or as preferred politically blunt about, they would shoot civilians, and they would try to cover it up, and it's a stain of Korean history. That's the best way to put it. And even when I first arrived in Korea and I worked in film and TV, I wanted to make movies about this kind of stuff because to me that was like the most interesting stories, both historically interesting and dramatically important and all these kind of things. But actually, you couldn't make it when President Park was elected. If you don't know, I mentioned before on the channel, I used to teach at Hongdae. And actually, my boss at the time got appointed to her administration. He's like really high up in that. And he ended up going to prison, which is kind of crazy because he was making a blacklist against artists. But I mentioned that is because at the time, all the producers that I knew were like, you can't make those kind of movies. You can't make any movie, regarding any sort of corruption in the government history. Like they were really clamping down on that kind of stuff. And how it relates to the USA is I hope that we go into an environment, say in 2025, where people don't just lay down and surrender to the Trumps and the Musks and lay down to, all of their ridiculous false narratives that they're going to be pumping out in 2025. I hope people don't do that. Pay attention to the truth. There are others that are seeking it, if you're watching my channel as well as I am. And always remind yourself, only 49% of the people voted for Trump, so he doesn't even have a majority. And there's still a lot of good reporting out there. That's why, every day when I wake up and I'm just like, what the heck kind of, fire is going on in the Trump people now? What new corrupt person did they pick for their cabinet now? And we're going to track these things going on into next year. But I just wanted to let you know what's going on here in Korea, how it relates to sort of our conversation we had the last couple of videos. And I want to thank you again for being part of the community. And let's have a great 2025. So thanks again, and I'll catch you all in the next video.